Good evening, everybody. This is Darius Assemi. Welcome to our first episode of the year in 2026. Again, welcome to Unfiltered. Uh, Hope you had a safe and healthy new year so far. We've had great weather, some great sprinkles, good welcome rainfall in the valley, and of course, going into much cooler weather over the next few days. But let's start with that. I'm sorry. Before we start, Bill McEwen, my co-host. Welcome, Bill.
Welcome,
Hap-
Darius.
Happy New Year. Mike Rabasi is not here this evening, but we have two awesome special guests. Actually, a third one that may be joining us later on tonight. Miguel Arias, Fresno City Council member, Council Vice President. Welcome, Miguel. Let's get Miguel. Where is Miguel at? There we go. And good evening, Miguel, and welcome. And Roger Bonakdar, attorney with Bonakdar Law Firm, has represented a lot of big cases in Fresno, including the most recent Bitwise employee issues. I don't want to call it implosion, but represents a lot of folks on Bitwise. Welcome, gentlemen. Okay, weather for next few days, next 7 days forecast. Today was the warmest day of the week for the next 7 days. We're getting almost frost Thursday night. A little chilly, but relatively dry over the next at least week to 10 days. Do you get your news from TikTok? If so, do you think billionaire majority stakeholder Larry Ellison influences TikTok's algorithms? I don't use TikTok. By the way, this poll came out today. It'll be on for another week. So we'll see what the results are, and we'll report back next Tuesday evening. And we have an image of Mr. Ellison. There he is, co-founder of Oracle Corporation software company, very, very successful software company. And then we asked another question: where do you get your news? So there it is: digital news websites. Social media, at least so far, nobody said social media, but I know a few friends that get their news from TikTok and Facebook and some of the other social media platforms. Okay, we're going to go to Iran now. Put our focus on Iran and what's happening in that part of the world before we get to Central and South America and Venezuela. Obviously, we've heard a lot about what was shaped up since Saturday morning in Caracas. Okay, let's play this short video from Reuters of protests in Tehran and some of the other cities. And of course, one of the figures that has been relatively public on what's going on in Iran is the son of the old Shah, Reza Pahlavi, who's been advocating regime change, talking to both American folks, authorities, and Israeli authorities. And he's very smart. He knows his audience. He knows not a whole lot happens in the Middle East without Israel's knowledge and U.S. foreign policy in that part of the world, very dominated by Israeli positions. And he understands it well. There's a picture of him and his, it sounds like it is his wife, with Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu. This is over the summer. I believe, okay, from Washington Post, I believe this was actually in Tel Aviv. He's been advocating regime change in Iran, which is very popular with Iranian folks. Regime change is very popular. that country, Iran, country I was born and raised in and grew up. Uh, he that has been really decimated over the last almost 50 years by this regime. We've Some of us have seen or heard the news about Iran, especially central Iran, where the capital is, central and northern Iran, running out of water, mismanagement of the water systems, of the groundwater aquifers, etc. And then bring Roger Bonakdar, again, our local attorney that knows a lot about Middle East issues. Get your perspective on that part of the world. What do you see? What are you hearing, Roger, about Iran? Do you have folks inside Iran that you have information from? Are these Iran? Are these protests in a lot of the cities across the country? Are they just local protests? Are they inspired by CIA or Mossad or anybody that you know of? We know there's a lot of unhappy folks in Iran about what the government has done, or the oppressive regime of Iran. Any comments on that? You're on mute, Roger.
You would think by now I'd have that down, but here we go. Sorry. I mean, you nailed a lot of the big issues that Iran is facing. Some people know, some people don't, but Iran's been under, some pretty crushing sanctions for the better part of nearly 50 years after the revolution in 1979 and 1980. So it's extremely difficult and very expensive to get goods in and out of Iran. Some basic things that you would see at a rural health clinic are treasures higher than gold in Iran for medical use. Like they're unable to, they don't have medical isotopes for radiation. They have to import those things. They have, their economy has suffered greatly. We think inflation is bad here. Their equivalency of their currency to the dollar right now has risen to 700,000 to one. So for your average Jane or Joe over there, it is incredibly difficult for them to make ends meet, do basic things like buy meat or other things. Like an iPhone is just a complete luxury item that's left for the upper end of society at this point. And the real practical issues, like you pointed out, Darius, about water. So Iran and other countries in the Middle East, and really just outside of the United States generally, you have huge population centers around their national capital. And Tehran has been flirting with the idea of running out of water and having to relocate the capital to feed its growing and burgeoning population. So there's just a huge number of challenges that they're facing internally. And then, we all know that recently, we, the United States, in coordination with Israel, bombed nuclear facilities in Iran. So from what we can tell, which obviously they do throttle communications coming in and out of the country, the regime is fighting a multi-front war of its own, domestically being concerned about attacks from the outside, trying to quell uprisings internally. And unfortunately, there's a long history of that in Iran, including regime change involving us, the United States, Britain, and other powers.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that explanation. Now, the democratically elected government of Iran in 1953 was overthrown by the CIA, one of the first black ops of CIA. Anything, of course, I mean, whatever CIA does, we don't hear about, at least in mainstream media. Do you have any information about, are these protests all just homegrown, or do you have any information, I guess, on that? And then I wanted to, before I bring in Councilmember Miguel Arias, I'm going to talk about Khamenei potentially fleeing to another country. But do you have any data on, or any information on, is all the protests inspired by local folks?
I mean, I think it's anybody's guess. It's not as if there's a free flow of information in and out of Iran. We obviously know that Israel has interests in regime change there. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, visited the U.S. Congress multiple times and has said that he's testified in Senate committees about how he'd like to see regime change in Iran going back to as early as 1995. But in terms of the history of regime change in Iran and our involvement in it and other powers' involvement in it, so up until 1953, there was a Shah of Iran. It was a Reza Shah Pahlavi was his name, and in 1941, he was forced to abdicate in connection with Project Ajax, what we now know as Project Ajax. That was overseen by the Eisenhower administration and also coordinated with the British to force the Shah out because he was supplying oil to people that the Brits and the Russians didn't want him supplying oil to in World War II. So they forced him out. There were elections, and there's this guy named Mossadegh who was elected. Well, Mossadegh's theory was Iran is sitting on rivers of oil. This should be to the benefit of its people, and he nationalized their oil industry. What was known as the Anglo-Aryan Oil Company, which was a British and Iranian, co-op project. He nationalized it all, and he took it under his wing. And so then, through Project Ajax, they installed his son. They had Reza Pahlavi abdicate, and they installed his then 23-year-old son, who was more friendly to the U.S. to then run things. And then and it went on from there.
And then he was for a few days, I don't want to say overthrown, but he fled the country in 1953.
Correct.
By Mossadegh said, "Hey, you're the Shah. You're just a figurehead. I'm running the country. Sit back." And he fled the country, and CIA mounted the coup to bring the Shah back. That was 1953, if I remember correctly.
Correct. You're right. And from there, he remained in power until 1979. And then throughout the Middle East, in that period of time, Iran was the bulwark against communism from infiltrating from Russia, and obviously that was, that's involved some of the history of Afghanistan there as well. It was a huge ally of the United States. And then with the revolution of 1979, and in that time, we saw in all parts of the world, including the U.S., we had this reversion to intellectualism and demonizing rulers as despots, etc. And so there was an uprising which operated with the approval of the United States and the Carter administration and others, which then forced the Shah out of Iran in 1979. The Shah, meaning the Shah's son, he ended up dying in Cairo of cancer. He asked for permission to enter the United States and to seek, sorry, I'm downtown, so we get those creature comforts of ambulances. But he ended up he needed cancer treatment in 79 and 80. He was only allowed to get some treatment in the United States and ultimately was taken in Egypt. And that's where he died. And then from there, the Islamic Revolution took hold, and we have the Iran that we have today.
Thank you for that. And of course, we're getting some remnants of information that Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, that he may be fleeing to Moscow if protests continue. G.B. Wire had an article out today on that. Bill, you were sharing some thoughts with me on what he's worth and where he would go, and even though he's supposed to be ill as well at the age of 86, yeah. Bill?
So, I mean, the last good estimate of the Supreme Leader's financial worth was done in 2013, 2014 by Reuters. It was put at $95 billion at that time. This is just fleecing the people, taking control of companies, controlling companies. And so he has the money to safely escape. You can buy your freedom at that price. Surround yourself with guards and mercenaries, and in today's world have the most advanced technology. to keep you safe. However, most intelligence people, and an intelligence report was leaked to the Times of London or the Times of UK. And the report suggested that Moscow is really the only place available for the supreme leader to flee to. So if these protests continue and gather steam, and the key will be the supreme leader's personal safety. If he gets to the point where he feels like, his security forces on site can't guarantee his safety there, I would expect that he would leave. I think the other thing about what's going on in Iran is, you say overthrow the government, topple the government. Really, the question is what's next? And the big question in regard to that is what is real and what is not real. So you have so many interests there. I mean, it's a center of world political interest, and it's ripe for the taking. And we know that Iran could be a superpower again because of its vast potential. And so you have to analyze what's going on. You're going to have people talking about reform who are reform in name only. And then you're going to have people related to the supreme leader that are come out and give some concessions, but want to ascend to the top and basically maintain control. So it would be a situation like they have now, only light. So they may allow more personal expression and freedom. They may really work hard on trying to get the economy right. They may work hard on not stealing as much money and giving money back to the people. And then you have the Israeli factor. I mean, when I look at this situation, I just think that if you follow what President Trump said Saturday, when he laid out his so-called Dawn Row doctrine, he's carving the world up into about 4 parts. US controls the West, Russia controls their part of the world, the Chinese control the Far East and that their part of the Pacific Ocean. And I think he's really farming out the Middle East to Israel. However, it's Israel backed by the United States. That's the 4 spheres I see. And so even if there was a legitimate organic change in Iranian government, I don't think that the US and Israel would allow it.
Thank you, Bill. A lot of great information, Bill and Roger. To know that Khamenei is worth around $95 billion, while there's so many folks suffering in Iran. You know, unemployment rate in the 20% plus, inflation very high, affordability. I mean, folks can't afford, as Roger said a few minutes ago, meat in Iran. While this guy, through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, controls many of the industries, many of the businesses in Iran. Again, the Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, I think it's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is a part of the army and also dabbles in business. So if you want to run any size company, you have to share some of the proceeds with the IRGC, from what I understand. Eric Swanson, by the way, who has been on this program before, says Qom, which is a city south of Tehran, where Khamenei and a lot of the clerics are from. The IRGC headquarters has been taken over yesterday. Ayatollah is bringing in Hamas and Hezbollah fighters to help quell the riots and demonstrations. That's from, again, Eric Swanson. Thank you for that update, Eric. And salam to you, Eric. We will actually dig into that because there was lots of rumors in 1979, overthrow of the Shah, that a lot of folks from the Palestinian authorities and other parts of the Middle East came in to help overthrow the Shah and support Khomeini at the time to take over. Of course, Khomeini, one of the biggest Machiavellian folks, promised democracy. He said, "I'm just going to be a backdrop. I'm going to remove the Shah, have elections in Iran, and you guys run the country." Of course, once he got in and tasted some of that power, he goes, "This feels too good. So I'm going to make myself the supreme leader that oversees all of government, approves anybody that wants to run for office, and approves any legislation before it's introduced. And the president of Iran is going to answer to me." So the supreme leader is really the absolute powerful person in Iran. The president is kind of a figurehead. But thank you, Eric, for that. We will dig into if Hamas and Hezbollah fighters are in Iran trying to call the riots and demonstrations. We'll dig into that in the morning. Anything else before we go to Council Vice President Miguel Arias and talk about Venezuela? Anything else, Roger or Bill, on Iran? By the way, I think you both have said it. Or if you haven't said it, I've said it. I know Bill just said it. Israel has to give the green light before the United States will support a plan on Iran. I'm very confident that those conversations are taking place between Israeli leaders and authorities and U.S. authorities and leadership and the president. But we have Iran, Russia, and China, and the question is, what is China's role going to be? What would China and Russia allow to happen to Iran? Would they allow Iran's oil to be back in the market, and that population of 85 or 90 million folks be controlled by the West and the United States, or would they want a bigger footprint? So much of it depends on, from what I understand, the minerals under the dirt, underground. Is it the oil and other minerals that Iran has that China, Russia, or United States want to have access to? So we'll see. I'm going to go to Bill real quickly, and then Roger after Bill.
Yeah, so I would just note that if Hamas and the others are in there,
yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
in there, that gives the United States an excuse for intervention.
Okay, good points. That will be again Hezbollah out of Lebanon and Hamas out of however many are left out of parts of Palestinian properties. Roger.
I think there's a couple important things to note about Iran that are different. And people think that, oh, it's this third world country, et cetera. It's been under these sanctions. It's had all these problems. Iran is not Venezuela. Iran has a huge standing military. Iran has stockpiles of weapons. Iran is not going to be something that you're going to flick over and have revolution happen without serious risk. There's a lot going on there. And in addition to that, the motivations for China, I think, to not let Iran go, like some would say that Venezuela was a client state of Russia, and there's almost a trade-off to kind of, hey, we're going to let Venezuela fall because Venezuela was part of the BRICS alliance. Iran is part of the BRICS alliance. One of the big differences between Iran and Venezuela is Venezuela doesn't know how to pump oil out of the ground. All of Venezuela's stuff was a bunch of old Standard Oil and Exxon relics from the late 80s that they didn't know how to maintain. I mean, they were not getting anywhere near what they could have actually extracted out of the ground in oil in Venezuela. Iran doesn't have that problem. Iran's pumping oil. Iran's pumping a ton of it. Iran's been swapping oil and moving it around and trying to survive on its oil and natural gas resources. Another thing is Iran has a kind of oil that is more valuable than that in Venezuela. Venezuela has light sweet crude. We don't use light sweet crude to refine here. We use the kind that Iran has. So the motivation to get into Iran and get your hands on it is a lot higher than Venezuela because it's immediately available and it costs less to get a barrel of oil out of the ground in Iran than it does in Venezuela.
That's a great point, Roger and Bill. Great points. Mike Schwabenland says, please pay a tribute and briefly discuss January 6, 2021. One of our other guests that is not on yet was going to discuss that January 6th, which is again today, tribute to uh, again 5 years ago. Uh, Hopefully we'll get to that. Bill, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so Darius, if you go to whitehouse.gov, otherwise known as Pravda, today you will see that the Capitol riot on January 6, 2021, everyone that was arrested there that day was actually just a peaceful demonstrator. The architects of the riot were the Democrats. Mike Pence is a disgrace and a saboteur. He sabotaged the Trump's rightful election. Nancy Pelosi is responsible for the lack of a timely coordinated response to peaceful patriots who were goaded into becoming out of control by the Democrats. And you think I'm making this all up? No, it's right there on the White House website. What was white yesterday is black today. It's a totally Orwellian world. And what's really sad is there are a lot of Trump people that actually believe this.
Thank you, Bill, for that update. Any comments from Roger or Miguel before we switch back over to Venezuela on January 6th? Miguel?
I would simply say this, that there's been multiple stories on folks who were pardoned by the president for their insurrectionist actions who have recommitted new crimes against law enforcement, new crimes against family members, and they continue to engage in criminal activities. So it's a reflection of the felon president that we have. One felon to another, he continues to pardon felons that have been convicted through due process in the American court systems.
Got it. Thank you, Miguel, for those comments. Anything else before we go back to overseas, international waters? Okay. Let's bring in again Councilmember Arias, who's on the screen. The latest, the latest on Venezuela is economic collapse. Miguel, have you been in touch with folks that have relatives in that part of the world? I mean, what's happening there? There's economy's not doing well. There was elections, a year and a half ago or a few months ago, where the opposition leader that supposedly won all the numbers won, but again, Maduro, his opponent Machado, who vows to return to Venezuela, the numbers clearly showed her winning, but Maduro took office, suppressed the vote. Do you hear it from any folks?
What I'll tell you
about that?
What I've talked, Darius, from the people I've spoken to who are from Venezuela, some of them who are here as refugees and asylum seekers, following the legal process our country has for those seeking asylum, is that it's simply fearful. They're fearful of the instability that's even gone much broader than it was when they left, and for the reasons they left. The instability also of not knowing what's going to take place. Some people are suggesting that the Secretary of State Rubio is the interim president of the country. At least that's what he thinks he is. And what I'll tell you this from Venezuelans that I've spoken to is they're relieved that Maduro's not in power, but they're also not going to settle for a dictatorship of President Trump either. They're not going to, embrace a foreign leader to lead their country and to rob them from their natural resources, the largest oil reserves in the world, some of the largest gold reserves in the world, and some of the most valuable minerals in the world that are needed for EV and microchips. So they're not dumb people. They've been through decades of instability. This is the second or third attempt by the United States to intervene in Venezuelan politics. They supported the coup of Hugo Chavez more than 20 years ago and failed. And as a result, he became even stronger and remained in dictatorship for a longer period of time. So they are scared. They are uneasy. And there's more instability there today than there was when the former president was in power. But it is crystal clear to me, speaking to them, that they're not going to accept and embrace any foreign leadership or raping and pillaging of their natural resources by a foreign country, including the United States.
Great points. And nobody really wants to be told or occupied, whether it's the Palestinians in Gaza or folks in Venezuela. They don't want to be told by somebody else on who should come on. They want to have the opportunity to vote somebody that cares about them and their livelihoods and their problems and their issues and represents them appropriately in the world stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And the United States has an extremely poor history and a record of intervening in Latin American countries. It's intervened more than 56 times in the last 100 years, and the vast majority have resulted in instability, followed by dictatorships, authoritarianism, and collapse of their economies. So I think the United States should focus on what President Trump promised, which was America first. I think what he's delivered, as my colleague Supervisor Chavez framed it as, he promised America first, ran on America first, and is governing on America first, comma, last. The last thing he's worried about is Americans, the healthcare, loss that we're engaging in, the record inflation that we're still seeing, the little buying power that Americans have, unemployment rates increasing. It seems to me that the interest of Americans is the last priority that this president is interested in engaging in. It's probably because it's a much more difficult thing to do. And he's naturally always wanted to be a dictator. And I think thinks that a Latin American country called Venezuela is a perfect place for him to be the almighty dictator. But he will find history repeating itself. Americans do not have the stomach or the interest or the fortitude to completely engage in a foreign conflict that costs American lives.
Thank you, Miguel. Of course, there's a lot of folks during the 2 decades of this authoritarian rule. Folks have disappeared. Dissidents have, been killed, arrested, or simply disappeared. A lot of I don't want to use the word unrest, but oppressed people, a high level of poverty. And one of the richest mineral rich countries in the world to have one of the highest poverty rates in the world. It's really bad management. And when Bill was talking about Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, being worth $95 billion, and I think how much of the people of Iran's money did he steal and take? And then you look at, people like Maduro. I don't know what his net worth was, but so many folks around him, not immediately around him, but the average citizen and resident of Venezuela, whoever was left, we know that several million fled the country because they just couldn't even put food on the table.
You're absolutely right that, the current, the president of Venezuela is extremely bad leader in terms of his ability to grow his economy and manage it. You can get into the debt that was imposed on them by, foreign countries, including the America and its, oil corporations. But in the world, we have a history of, failed leaderships and failed states and failed countries. But ultimately, it's not our responsibility to intervene, because when we've selected the leader, which we have in the past, we recognize, the next president of Venezuela to, compete against Hugo Chavez. That didn't work out so well. Whenever we've installed foreign leaders in El Salvador, in Honduras, in Guatemala, all those folks have equally failed and equally, ripped off those foreign countries. In Mexico, there's a saying that they keep the president's salary low because the president will simply pay themselves. There's no need to pay them a high salary to get them to serve, because once they're in office, they'll pay themselves. And these are, former presidents that are educated American institutions. If it simply takes a foreign leader to commit crimes or to mismanage a country, if that is sufficient standard for America to intervene or a foreign country to intervene and arrest that foreign leader, then President Trump, meets those qualifications. He's a convicted felon multiple times over. He's failed to mismanage our country, both economically and socially. And, he's engaging in international war crimes and, by kidnapping foreign leaders under this rationale of drug trafficking. A month after he pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted and sentenced to 45 years in federal prison for being an actual international drug ring leader.
I know
You
there's a
can't
lot
make
of
this stuff up.
no. There's there's definitely some questions to be asked. Why was he former president of Honduras pardoned just a few months ago?
Just last month in December
Just
for
last
Christmas.
month, yeah, you're right. What about Venezuelans fleeing to El Salvador and getting tortured there? Have you heard anything about?
What we've heard is the Venezuelans that we've deported from the United States to El Salvador have been victims of torture. We actually, over the last few years, we've seen an influx of Venezuelans leaving Venezuela because of the economic crisis and the mismanagement of the country. I anticipate that to grow. I anticipate the unrest in Venezuela to increase and more refugees to end up as a result of. If you look at the history of our interventions in Latin American countries, each time we have intervened, as a result, we've created refugees. And as a result, the country has had to accept asylum seekers of those countries. That's why my hometown of Mendota, that was primarily Mexican when I grew up, is now primarily Salvadorian, because we accepted all the refugees after we intervened and supported a civil war in El Salvador that failed, and resulted in conflicts for decades. So I caution us with engaging in that kind of intervention, because ultimately we will find refugees, and I doubt any of our partners internationally are going to agree to take refugees from Venezuela when we are the ones that created the crisis by intervening and kidnapping their foreign leader.
Well, you make a great point, because we've got a really bad record, especially in the Middle East, going in, blowing up countries, whether it's Afghanistan, Iraq, other parts of that region, and then going, well, we're not going to take any refugees in. And look, we deported refugees back to Afghanistan. These are the folks that were helping U.S. armed forces in Afghanistan over the last decade or more, and they were just deported back. At least, I don't know, several dozen of them. So it's easy to go in and blow stuff up, and then we leave a wreckage behind, and then we go, well, you folks need to kind of stay where you're at and suffer. But majority of folks go, hey, I want to take care of my family. I can't live in this hellhole. And by the way, you look at countries, oppressive regimes like Libya, but before Gaddafi was overthrown or killed, really, relatively, from all the readings I've done over the weekend, relatively stable. Yes, Gaddafi was a bad dude, did a lot of bad things to its own people and maybe outside of Libya. But we don't, the challenge is we go in, we don't really stay in long enough to make sure there's a stable regime and the people are taken care of. As we did, by the way, between World War I and World War II, and what the amount of money we spent in Europe in World War after the post-Second War, rebuilding those countries. We're not doing that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the unique difference, if you study history, the reconstruction of Germany and Japan is far different than our interventions in the Latin American countries or in the Middle East. We actually completely rebuilt the countries and said, you run it. We did not run the government. We did not put up our own representatives to run the government. We did not steal the minerals from them. We didn't allow corporations to embed themselves. I caution us on so many fronts, Darius, because there's a saying, right? It takes a lot of people to build something that any fool can just tear down. And we're seeing this live again, history repeating itself. And I also want to point out that some folks on the right have argued that there was justification, not just because of the drug issues, but because of the oil. as your former guest pointed out, the crude oil in Venezuela is not what we process in the United States. They do have the largest reserves, but it is not in the interest of American oil companies to process more oil on an annual basis. They're already seeing the lowest, dollar per barrel of oil in the market. They're seeing significant and massive layoffs in the Texas oil industry, refineries, and the oil fields. There is no way that America is going to get into Venezuela and produce 1 million new gallons of oil a year, because all it would do is lower prices here and profit margins for oil corporations, which is in nobody's interest. What Venezuela oil was going towards was China and Russia. And they do process their type of oil. And you can argue that that might be in our interest to keep them from obtaining that access to the oil reserves. But I think we have much bigger problems with China than simply them acquiring Venezuelan oil through the marketplace. I think they're beating us on so many fronts, in the car manufacturing, in manufacturing in general, in artificial intelligence, and they're beating us in the competition for the smartest, talent around the world. Because what did we recently do? Kick off all of the, student visa recipients from the best and the brightest talent in the world from our top universities. The United States was known for recruiting the smartest and the brightest talent across the world and having the best higher education research universities in the world. And this president has said, you know what? We don't want smart people here. However, if you have a rich relative and you can pay $1 million for a green card, I'll take you. I just won't take you if you're the leader of the next Google or Microsoft or Tesla. I think that's short-sighted, and that's going to hurt us in the long term.
No, hey, I mean, go back, one of the other well-known Republicans, Mitt Romney, in the 2012, 2014 era, said, hey, if I was president, I would attach a green card to every foreign student that graduated from college. We bring people here, people come here, they pay for their education, we help educate them, and then we send them back home. We want to keep that talent here in our country, which is, I completely agree with that. We need to become a magnet again for the best and brightest talent. We need talent, brain power. We need investors. We need muscle power to do the work that so many Americans that are born and raised here don't want to do. This is just the reality. Unfortunately,
it's also a reality in an aging country where birth rates are at a record low.
Correct, close to zero. That's correct. And that's going to be
we see our school districts, declining enrollment because birth rates are down. People can't afford to raise 2 or 3 kids anymore in this economy, and this, in this marketplace that we operate under. So, as we're an aging country, and we've stopped the entrance of new immigrants, and we see the birth rates flatten out, all we're going to end up with is people who are drawing down Social Security and who need 24-hour care without the folks willing to give the care or contribute into the Social Security system to pay for the care.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. That's going to be an issue unless robots end up running our country. Forget factories. There's a lot of them in there already. They do all the manual work. Unless 5 years from now we're going to have robots that are going to pay some kind of a tax and do all the work that Americans do now or don't want to do, we're going to have an issue because you're exactly right. Our birth rate in our country is close to zero. It's going to create an issue both for providing care and also providing finances, the tax revenue to provide the care for the elderly, Social Security and other healthcare programs. Let me bring Bill in. Bill, you have comments on several of these points. Let's hear from you. Yeah, and you're on mute, Bill.
Councilmember Arias raised the point about the refugees. I would point out the Trump administration has erased all temporary protected status for Venezuelans who are in the United States of America. So part of this, besides regime change and grabbing at the oil, is they're getting ready to deport 700,000 Venezuelans who are in our country back to Venezuela. And their headline is, well, they're needed back there to rebuild the country. In addition, Trump administration has, fired practically every immigration hearing judge. So those that were already in the system are not getting their hearings. I'd also like to point out to viewers that last Sunday we had a great story on what America might look like with zero immigration. And it really delved into the best and brightest. And we still have some of the best and brightest who came here 5, 6, 7 years ago. They're finishing their PhDs, their advanced engineering degrees, everything they could contribute about technology and the sciences and medical fields. And there's no place for them now here in America under the Trump administration. So they'll be looking around the world, and we know that China, Japan, Canada, Europe, all are offering financial incentives right now to grab up, to grab up this talent. And then we talked about what the Trump administration talks about. Well, how about J.D. Vance? Basically, his attitude about women is they need to be barefoot and pregnant. I mean, are we in the 19th century? The whole Trump international foreign relations, foreign affairs model, he is William McKinley, a 19th century president. Tariffs, those are from the 19th century. Trump wants a dumb America. And right now, I don't know, 48% of Americans are willingly participating in that. This whole idea that facts don't matter, we have alternate facts. The Capitol riot was caused by the Democrats, the people that were attacking police officers, security personnel, they're heroes. I mean, it's revolting, it's disgusting. And that's where we're at now.
Thank you, Bill. Great information. Let me read several comments. And by the way, we're going to end some positive news about the city of Fresno. Police department had a press conference today. We're going to share some of that data. But before I get there, Eric Swanson has several comments. I want to try to get to some of them. Today we have, this is Eric Swanson. Today we have President Trump announced that he will be in control of over 50 million barrels of oil and will help sell this oil on behalf of the Venezuelan people. This has been an agreement announced with the interim president. And then you have no idea what J.D. Vance thinks, Bill. That was another comment. Selling oil at dirt cheap prices to adversaries for all kinds of support. Miguel is 10 days late on that info. We spent 20 years in Afghanistan and rebuilt all over the country. We also promoted free Afghan elections. Miguel, do you know anything about the history there? Let me say this about Eric on Afghanistan. Whatever 20 years we spent there, amount of money, I don't know, $2 trillion, $3 trillion. You were there. I think you've served there. I'm sure you've read stories or heard from folks that we bombed weddings by mistake, bombed schools by mistake, killed a lot of folks accidentally, hopefully accidentally. And I'm sure we built infrastructure there, but we left all of it behind. I did visit Kabul, Afghanistan in 2009, and there was sewer running into the streets of Kabul.
And I'll point out to the person who said about the president being in charge of 50 million barrels a year for Venezuela oil. Venezuela currently sells and produces 326 million barrels a year of oil. It's just the same old BS misinformation engaging from the White House. To your comment, Bill, on the vice president, the guy went to Yale Law School and the president went to Wharton, and yet their position is that no one else should obtain a higher level of education, when that's exactly how they ended up in their respective roles. So no matter what the president suggests that he's in control of in Venezuela, I think it's far from the actual truth and from what's already taking place without their intervention. The fact is, we broke it. Now we're going to own it and expect America to spend billions of dollars in Venezuela while healthcare is cut for Americans at home.
Thank you, Miguel. Bill?
Yeah, and in regards, I don't know what J.D. Vance is thinking. I was repeating what he has said on countless occasions. That the woman's place is in the home. Now, he's allowed to be married to an executive who makes six figures because the Republicans all excuse that. But he wants women pregnant. He wants them 5 or 6 kids a year. He doesn't want them to have professional careers. And he has said this on countless occasions. So I don't have to know what he's thinking. I'm just relaying exactly what he has said, only I said it in a way that might connect with people and anger those Trumpers out there. He wants women barefoot and pregnant. Now, will he run on that platform in 2028? No, he's more likely to keep it down on the down low. The other thing to remember is President Trump said he had never heard of Agenda 2025, had no intention to implement it. Well, let's look at what he's done. He's gone right down the list like a punch list, one by one, by one, by one, by one.
Okay. Gosh, there's a lot more to discuss. There are more comments by Eric. Vance is promoting motherhood as an actual noble choice. Anyhow, we can debate that all day, but let me go back to Afghanistan for a minute. We spent a lot of U.S. taxpayer money in Afghanistan. A lot of folks got killed. Bad guys got killed. Civilians and innocent folks got killed. We did build some infrastructure, but we left that country and back to Taliban. And Taliban are in control, and it's nowhere on anybody's radar screen on what the Taliban are doing to the folks, to the men, especially women of Afghanistan. And that's a shame. Amount of money spent, and American lives lost and Afghani lives lost. And of course, the part that's is really concerning to me is Afghani folks that help U.S. armed forces, whether it's intelligence, whether they were cab drivers, or they were helpers, or translators, that needed asylum in the United States, or they would be killed by the new government of Afghanistan, by the new Taliban. A lot of them were deported back, which means as soon as they land, they probably got executed. That's a really, really bad message to send out to the world. You help us, you're going to be on your own, buddy. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'm going to end with some good news. Miguel, Bill, anything else on? Okay. Murder is at a 51-year low in the city of Fresno. Let's put slide 14 up. There we go. DUI arrests, I guess, are higher, though. Shooting incidents lower. Let's put that slide 16. And homicide rates. There we go. Homicide rates continue to dwindle, which is really good news. Organized retail theft. Recovered stolen merchandise over $1.2 million. Slide 18. Let's put that up. There we go. So folks that were organized got in and stole stuff from our homes, from retail. This was actually on retail, from stores. 1.2 million of it was recovered. So folks thinking about doing that, they're going to get arrested, and stuff is going to get recovered. Miguel, any comments from you on that?
What I'll tell you, Darius, is that crime has been declining ever since it peaked in the 1990s. I think we all remember the 90s as one of the most violent decades in our country's history across every major city and rural areas. And in the city of Fresno, we've seen a significant decline that's been sustained since the pandemic. The pandemic was a peak for us, a lot of stress for good reasons. And we as a city have hired a record amount of officers. Yes, the Democrat supermajority council has hired a record amount of police officers. We've made them the highest paid officers in the Central Valley, as well as the highest paid firefighters in the Central Valley, all while investing a record amount of money in improving neighborhoods. And thanks to Measure P, investing in fixing every single park in the city and building half a dozen new parks in the city. So what we've seen is both increasing the amount of resources to prevent kids from going into gangs and crimes, improving neighborhoods so that people's neighborhoods are safer. We've been shutting down smoke shops, illegal cannabis operations, gambling shops across the area, and including hiring more police officers so we can reduce the response time for those who call 911 for medical or some kind of crime taking place. So it's been a good run for us as a city. I expect it will continue to decrease if we continue to balance investing on prevention as well as response to those who are committing crimes. And again, holding them accountable. I'm personally still disappointed that the amount of resources we as a city are spending on those individuals who intentionally trespass property, who intentionally encamp in private property and public property. We have been arresting thousands of them and referring them to a district attorney for prosecution. And she has yet to prosecute one single person under the county or the city ordinance. And that's what we've seen from our residents. The highest level of complaint is the amount of active drug use that's taking place in our city streets in broad, public. So I think there's still room for us to improve in holding those accountable who are unwilling or unable to take the help that we've offered to get them off the streets and get them off drugs.
Thank you, Miguel. Great points. And the last slide on the crime issue, Modesto's homicide rate is down 100%. A population of 220,000. So Fresno is down 20%, some number like that. Maybe I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but Modesto's number down 100%. It was 7 in 2024 homicides, and in 2025 they got that number down to 0. So a great job, Modesto. Population of over 220,000 folks. Okay, if there's nothing else, I want to just end with one more fantastic news. Let's put slide 27 up. And I want to thank all of our GV Wire readers and viewers between Unfiltered and our website. Our viewership in 2025 over 2024 is up 72%. So that was really fantastic job to our team. Bill McEwen, who leads the news, that directs the news, Anthony Haddad, who manages our team, and of course our great journalists, Edward Smith, Anya Ellis, David Taub, Nancy Price, who's part-time with us now. Of course, we have great videographers, Josh Tello and Eric Martinez, who do all the video and the images the beautiful images that you see on GV Wire on the local stories. So thank you to our great, fantastic team and to the viewers of Central California. We're up substantially this, again, thanks to the team and to the folks out there. If there's nothing else to add, Miguel, any final comments?
No, just simply congratulations on increasing your viewership and readership. I think at a time when the traditional newspapers of the Fresno Bee and other media outlets have either shrunk or have been dismantled by some of our, super rich folks in this country. It is very important to have local media. So I appreciate the coverage that GV Wire has engaged in, Fresno Land has engaged in as another news option locally. And I was always fearful that if the Fresno Bee continued to decline, that we would see local news go away. But you and others have stepped up to fill that void. So that is definitely appreciated, as global government operates best when we are scrutinized, rigorously and independently, and you guys call us out when we need to be called out, and you raise a mirror to all of us who are doing this work on behalf of the public.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Council Vice President. Bill, anything?
Yeah, I think we should mention the great producer of Unfiltered, Paul Marshall, as well as the
Yes,
fantastic graphic images that he produces every day for our news stories. They're often very compelling, attract a lot of people to the story. And I know Miguel has probably in some cases applauded Paul's image. In other cases, he's probably gone, no.
Just when he makes me look fat, he reminds me that I was overweight for a while. So, Paul, please use updated photos. My family would appreciate.
You know what? Bill, thank you for. I completely blanked out. Yes, Paul, of course, Paul Marshall, who has an incredible personality, by the way.
Yeah.
For some of you, most of you don't know him, but very funny, witty personality. Does great graphic art, and sometimes puts stuff in front of the team that goes, "Hey, this is what we should be looking at," and some of it has a lot of shock value. It doesn't get aired. It just gets circulated internally. But yes, thank you, Paul, as well. And again, on behalf of all of us at GV Wire, thank you, Miguel Arias, Council Vice President, joining us. Thank you, Roger Bonakdar. I think he dropped off earlier. And Bill and the rest of the crew, have a great week. It's going to be cold at night. But we have at least live in a great country and a much safer city. And we feel, I'm going to say this, I feel really sad about the people of Gaza, who's their strip that was occupied and not a good place to live. Is not almost 80% destroyed. There's a lot of food aid trucks at the border that are not allowed to get in by Israeli forces. We're going to talk about a lot of that next week on this show. So stay tuned, folks. Miguel, I hope that we'll see you back here soon when you're ready. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. You be safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.